A young millionaire got a homeless woman pregnant and everyone laughed at him, but years later. The night air bit with a fierce chill as Roger Morgan's sleek black Audi glided through the nearly empty streets of downtown. His fingers, still stiff from gripping his Mont Blanc pen during endless meetings, tapped an impatient rhythm on the leather steering wheel. The city lights blurred past, a kaleidoscope of neon and shadow that seemed to mock the emptiness gnawing at his core. As he waited at a red light, his gaze drifted to the sidewalk. There, huddled in the doorway of a closed shop, was a figure that made him pause. A young woman, her frame slight and shivering, clutched a thin blanket around her shoulders. Her face, partially obscured by tangled hair, bore the haunted look of someone who had seen too much hardship. Roger's first instinct was to look away, to pretend he hadn't seen her. After all, wasn't that what everyone did? But something about her stayed with him, tugging at a part of his conscience he thought he'd buried long ago under spreadsheets and profit margins. The light turned green and Roger drove on, but the image of the woman remained etched in his mind. As he pulled into the underground parking of his luxury apartment building, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just witnessed something significant. Something that would change the course of his life forever. Little did Roger know that the woman he'd seen was Valentina, a person with a past as complex and mysterious as the city itself. And their paths were about to intertwine in ways neither of them could have imagined. Roger Morgan stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse apartment, gazing out at the glittering cityscape below. At 32, he was the youngest executive vice president in his family's multinational corporation, Morgan Enterprises. His life was a testament to success, designer suits, luxury cars, and a black American Express card that seemed to have no limit. Yet, as he swirled the amber liquid in his crystal tumbler, he felt a hollowness that no amount of wealth could fill. Born into privilege, Roger had always been expected to follow in his father's footsteps. George Morgan, a titan of industry, had built an empire from the ground up, and he expected nothing less than perfection from his only son. Roger's mother, Elizabeth, a socialite known for her charity gallus and impeccable taste, had groomed him for the upper echelons of society since he was a child. Their expectations weighed heavily on Roger's shoulders, a constant pressure that he both resented and strived to meet. Despite his outward success, Roger felt like an imposter in his own life. The cold, calculating world of high finance left him feeling empty and disconnected. He longed for something real, something that mattered beyond profit margins and stock prices. But in the gilded cage of his existence, he couldn't quite grasp what that might be. Across the city, in a world far removed from Roger's opulent lifestyle, Valentina huddled in the doorway of a closed bakery, trying to shield herself from the biting wind. At 28, she had already lived a lifetime of hardships. Her long, dark hair, once glossy and well-maintained, now hung in tangled waves around her gaunt face. Her clothes, a mismatched assortment of donations, did little to protect her from the elements. But Valentina's eyes, a striking shade of green, still held a spark of intelligence and determination. They hinted at a past far different from her current circumstances, a mystery that she guarded fiercely. Every night, as she fought for survival on the unforgiving streets, she clung to a secret that could change everything, if only she dared to reveal it. Back in the world of high finance, Patrick Donovan and Fred Lancaster, Roger's fellow executives at Morgan Enterprises, watched their young colleague with a mixture of admiration and suspicion. Patrick, a silver-haired veteran of Wall Street, saw Roger as a threat to his own position. He masked his jealousy with a paternal facade, always ready with unsolicited advice and thinly veiled criticisms. Fred, on the other hand, was a numbers man through and through. He respected Roger's intelligence but worried about his perceived lack of killer instinct. In Fred's world, compassion was a weakness, and he sensed a dangerous softness in Roger that could jeopardize the company's cutthroat reputation. As Roger navigated the treacherous waters of corporate politics, he remained unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. But he couldn't have imagined that his life was about to intersect with Valentina's in a way that would shake the very foundations of his world. Months later, the pitter-patter of tiny feet echoed through Roger and Valentina's apartment. Benjamin, their miracle child, toddled across the plush carpet, his chubby hands reaching for a colorful xylophone. At just 2 years old, he already showed an uncanny affinity for music, his face lighting up with joy every time he coaxed a melody from his toys. Valentina watched him with a mixture of love and anxiety. The journey to motherhood had been fraught with danger, her pregnancy plagued by complications that had threatened both her life and Benjamin's. Even now, as she marveled at her son's growth, she couldn't shake the fear that their hard-won happiness might be snatched away at any moment. Roger too felt the weight of fatherhood. He had fought battles on all fronts against his disapproving parents, his skeptical colleagues, and his own self-doubt. But looking at Benjamin, he knew it had all been worth it. His son represented everything he had never known he wanted, a love so pure and unconditional that it terrified him. As Benjamin grew, so did the whispers of his extraordinary talent. Piano teachers spoke in hushed, excited tones about his natural ability. It seemed that music flowed through him as naturally as blood through his veins. For Roger and Valentina, their son's gift was both a blessing and a source of apprehension. They wanted to nurture his talent, but they also feared the pressure and scrutiny it might bring. Little did they know that their family was about to grow once more. As Valentina felt the first flutters of new life within her, she and Roger faced the prospect of another high-risk pregnancy. But this time they were stronger, united by the love they had forged in the face of adversity. Together, Roger and Valentina stood on the precipice of a new chapter in their lives. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges they couldn't yet imagine. But as they held each other close, watching their son play in the soft evening light, they felt ready to face whatever the future might hold. Little did they know that the greatest tests of their love and resilience were yet to come. The night Roger's life changed forever began like any other. He left the office late, his mind still buzzing with figures and projections. As he drove through the city, the same streets he'd traveled countless times before suddenly seemed different. The image of the woman he'd seen earlier haunted him, tugging at his conscience. Before he fully realized what he was doing, Roger found himself turning his car around, retracing his route. His heart raced as he scanned the sidewalks, searching for a glimpse of the mysterious woman. When he finally spotted her, huddled on a park bench, he felt a surge of relief mixed with trepidation. Roger parked his car and approached cautiously, his designer shoes out of place on the gritty pavement. "Excuse me," he called softly, not wanting to startle her. The woman's head snapped up, her green eyes wide with fear and suspicion. "I'm not here to hurt you," Roger said, holding up his hands. "I saw you earlier and I couldn't stop thinking about you. It's freezing out here. I have an apartment nearby. You could warm up, get something to eat." The woman regarded him warily, her gaze flicking between his face and the expensive car behind him. "Why?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "What do you want from me?" Roger was taken aback by the sharpness in her tone. There was an intelligence there, a fierce pride that survival on the streets hadn't dimmed. "Nothing," he replied honestly. I want to help, if you'll let me." For a long moment, the woman said nothing. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Valentina," she said quietly. "My name is Valentina." As they walked to his car, Roger felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. He was acutely aware of the vast gulf between their worlds, of how bizarre this situation would seem to anyone who knew him. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The ride to Roger's apartment was silent, thick with unspoken questions. Valentina sat rigidly in the passenger seat, her eyes darting around as if memorizing escape routes. When they arrived at the luxury high-rise, her eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. Inside the apartment, Valentina stood awkwardly in the center of the living room, looking small and out of place amid the sleek, modern furnishings. Roger, suddenly unsure of himself, gestured vaguely toward the kitchen. "Are you hungry? I could make something." Valentina shook her head. "A shower," she said softly, "if that's okay." Roger nodded, showing her to the guest bathroom. As the sound of running water filled the apartment, he sank onto his couch, his mind reeling. What was he doing? What would his parents say? His colleagues? Yet beneath the doubt, there was a sense of rightness, of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Little did Roger know that this impulsive act of kindness would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything he thought he knew about himself, about love, and about the world he lived in. As Valentina showered, washing away the grime of the streets, neither of them could have imagined the journey that lay ahead, a journey of love, loss, redemption, and unexpected joy. If you're intrigued by Roger and Valentina's story and want to discover where their path leads, make sure to subscribe to our channel. You won't want to miss the twists and turns that await this unlikely pair as their lives intertwine in ways they never could have imagined. As the weeks turned into months, Roger and Valentina's relationship evolved in ways neither of them could have predicted. The initial awkwardness gave way to a tentative friendship and then, almost imperceptibly, to something deeper. Valentina, once guarded and wary, began to reveal glimpses of her true self, intelligent, witty, and fiercely independent. Roger found himself captivated by her resilience and the quiet strength that had seen her through unimaginable hardships. He started looking forward to coming home, knowing Valentina would be there, ready to engage in conversations that challenged his worldview and made him question everything he thought he knew. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Valentina finally opened up about her past. "I wasn't always like this, she said softly, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "I had a life before everything fell apart." Roger listened intently as Valentina recounted her story. She had been a promising law student, on track to graduate at the top of her class. But then her father fell ill, and everything changed. She dropped out of school to care for him, draining her savings and taking on crushing debt. When he passed away, Valentina was left with nothing, no degree, no money, and a mountain of medical bills. "Yet I tried to get back on my feet," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But once you fall that far, it's like the whole world turns its back on you. No one wants to hire someone without a permanent address. No one wants to rent to someone without a job. It's a vicious cycle." Roger felt a surge of admiration mixed with shame. He had never truly understood the systemic barriers that kept people trapped in poverty. Impulsively, he reached out and took Valentina's hand. "You're not alone anymore," he said firmly. "We'll figure this out together." The moment their hands touched, something shifted between them. The air seemed to crackle with unspoken possibility. Slowly, hesitantly, they leaned towards each other. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, but filled with the promise of something more. As their relationship deepened, so did the complications in Roger's life. His parents, upon learning of Valentina, were livid. George Morgan, red-faced and spluttering, accused Roger of throwing away his future on a gold-digging streetwalker. "Have you lost your mind?" George roared during a tense family dinner. "Do you have any idea what this will do to our reputation? To the company?" Elizabeth, usually the picture of poise, was equally distraught. "Darling," she pleaded, her voice strained, "surely you can see this is just a phase. A charitable impulse taken too far. There are proper channels for helping the less fortunate, Roger, for the first time in his life, stood his ground against his parents. "Valentina is not a charity case," he said firmly. "She's intelligent, kind, and stronger than anyone I've ever met. I love her and I won't give her up just because she doesn't fit into your narrow view of what's acceptable." The argument ended with slammed doors and icy silence. Roger left his parents' mansion feeling both liberated and terrified. He had never defied them so openly before, and the consequences were yet to be seen. At work, things were equally tense. Whispers followed Roger through the corridors of Morgan Enterprises. His colleagues, once sycophantic in their attempts to curry favor with the boss's son, now regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Patrick and Fred cornered him one afternoon, their concern barely masking their disapproval. "Roger, my boy," Patrick began, his tone patronizing, "we're worried about you. This dalliance of yours is becoming quite the topic of conversation." Fred, never one for subtlety, cut to the chase. "What Patrick's trying to say is that you're jeopardizing everything we've worked for. The board is starting to question your judgment. If this continues, it could affect your position in the company." Roger felt a flash of anger. "My personal life is none of the board's business," he snapped. "I'm more than capable of separating my professional and private lives." But even as he said it, Roger knew it wasn't entirely true. Valentina had changed him in fundamental ways. He found himself questioning business practices he had once accepted without thought. The relentless pursuit of profit at any cost no longer sat well with him, not when he had seen firsthand the human toll of unchecked capitalism. As Roger grappled with these internal conflicts, life threw him another curveball. Valentina missed her period. A home pregnancy test confirmed what they both suspected: they were going to have a baby. The news hit them like a thunderbolt. Valentina, her face pale, looked at Roger with a mixture of fear and hope. I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. "I'm not ready. We're not ready." Roger, his own mind reeling, pulled her close. "We'll figure it out," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "Whatever happens, we're in this together." But as the reality of impending parenthood set in, so did the complications. Valentina's first prenatal checkup revealed potential issues. The doctor, her face grave, explained that due to Valentina's history of malnutrition and the stresses her body had endured on the streets, the pregnancy would be high risk. "We'll need to monitor you closely," the doctor said. "There's a higher chance of complications, both for you and the baby." The news cast a shadow over what should have been a joyous time. Valentina, already struggling with the dramatic changes in her life, now faced the added stress of a difficult pregnancy. She withdrew into herself, spending long hours staring out the window, her hand resting protectively on her growing belly. Roger did his best to support her, but he felt woefully unprepared. He threw himself into research, reading every pregnancy book he could find and joining online forums for expectant parents. But no amount of information could quell the fear that gripped him every time he thought about the risks Valentina and their unborn child faced. At work, Roger's distraction became impossible to hide. He missed meetings, made careless errors in reports, and spent more time on personal calls than on actual work. Patrick and Fred watched with growing alarm as their young colleague seemed to unravel before their eyes. One afternoon, after Roger had fumbled his way through an important client presentation, Patrick called him into his office. "This has gone on long enough," he said, his tone uncharacteristically harsh. "You need to get your act together, Roger. The company can't afford your personal drama." Roger bristled at Patrick's words. "My personal drama, as you call it, is my family," he retorted. "I won't apologize for prioritizing them." Patrick's eyes narrowed. "Family?" he scoffed. "You mean that homeless woman and her bastard child?" "Wake up, Roger, she's using you. Once she has your money and your name, she'll be gone faster than you can blink." Something snapped inside Roger. Before he knew what he was doing, his fist connected with Patrick's jaw, sending the older man stumbling backward. The office erupted into chaos as people rushed to separate them. In the aftermath of the altercation, Roger found himself suspended indefinitely. As he cleared out his desk, ignoring the shocked stares of his colleagues, he felt a strange sense of relief mixed with terror. He had burned a bridge he had spent his entire life building, but for the first time he felt like he was standing up for something that truly mattered. When he arrived home, still shaken from the day's events, he found Valentina curled up on the couch, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "I heard you on the phone," she said softly. "You lost your job because of me, didn't you?" Roger sat beside her, taking her hands in his. "No," he said firmly. "I lost my job because I finally stood up for what I believe in. You and this baby, you're my priority now. Everything else is just details." Valentina looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "But your whole life, your career, your family." Roger shook his head. "None of that matters if I can't be true to myself. You've shown me what really matters in life, Valentina. I don't want to be the person I was before I met you." As they held each other, both acutely aware of the challenges that lay ahead, neither Roger nor Valentina could have imagined the storms they would weather together. The road ahead would be fraught with obstacles, financial struggles, health scares, and the continued disapproval of Roger's family and former colleagues. But in that moment, as the sun set on Roger's old life and the promise of a new dawn beckoned, they felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever came their way, they would face it together. Little did they know that the greatest test of their love and resolve was yet to come. As Valentina's pregnancy progressed, the complications the doctor had warned about began to manifest. And each doctor's visit brought new worries, each test result another reason for concern. Roger threw himself into caring for Valentina with the same intensity he had once devoted to his career. He attended every appointment, pored over medical journals, and sought out the best specialists money could buy. But even as he did everything in his power to ensure a healthy pregnancy, he couldn't shake the nagging fear that it might not be enough. As the months passed, Roger's financial situation became increasingly precarious. Without his job at Morgan Enterprises, he was burning through his savings at an alarming rate. The cost of Valentina's medical care, combined with their living expenses, was quickly depleting the nest egg he had built over years of high-powered corporate work. One evening, as Roger sat at the kitchen table, poring over bills and bank statements, the reality of their situation hit him like a physical blow. If things continued as they were, they would be in serious financial trouble long before the baby was born. Valentina, noticing his distress, came to sit beside him. "What is it?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. Roger hesitated, not wanting to add to her worries, but they had promised honesty to each other no matter how difficult. "We're running out of money," he admitted. "At this rate, we'll be broke within a few months." Valentina's face paled, her hand instinctively moving to her swollen belly. "What are we going to do?" she whispered. Roger reached out, covering her hand with his own. "We'll figure it out," he said, trying to inject confidence into his voice. "I'll find a job. We might have to downsize, make some sacrifices, but we'll make it work." As they sat there, hands intertwined, both acutely aware of the challenges ahead, neither could have predicted the twist of fate that was about to turn their world upside down once again. The journey that had begun on a cold night when their paths first crossed was far from over. In fact, the most dramatic chapters of their story were yet to be written. The day Benjamin came into the world was a mixture of joy and terror. Valentina went into labor 2 months early, her body racked with pain and fear. Roger, his face pale with worry, rushed her to the hospital, his heart pounding in his chest. The delivery was fraught with complications. Valentina's blood pressure skyrocketed, and the doctors feared for both her life and the baby's. For hours, Roger paced the waiting room, his mind a whirlwind of worst-case scenarios. And when he finally heard the weak cry of his newborn son, relief washed over him like a tidal wave. Benjamin was tiny, barely 5 pounds, and had to be immediately placed in the NICU. His little body was a tangle of tubes and wires, each beep of the monitors a reminder of how fragile his hold on life was. Valentina, exhausted and emotional, could only see him through the incubator glass, her hands pressed against it as if she could will her strength into him. The following weeks were a blur of hospital visits, sleepless nights and mounting medical bills. Roger split his time between caring for Valentina at home and sitting vigil by Benjamin's incubator. The strain began to show on both of them, dark circles under their eyes, tempers frayed by stress and worry. One particularly difficult night, as Roger watched Benjamin's tiny chest rise and fall, he overheard two nurses whispering nearby. "Poor little thing," one said, her voice laced with pity, "born to a homeless woman and a man who threw away everything for her. What kind of life will he have?" The words stung Roger deeply. He looked at his son, so small and vulnerable, and felt a surge of fierce protectiveness. He vowed then and there that he would do whatever it took to give Benjamin the best life possible, no matter the cost. As Benjamin grew stronger and was finally allowed to come home, new challenges arose. The constant care required for a premature baby took its toll on Roger and Valentina. They took turns for night feedings, diaper changes, and soothing Benjamin's frequent crying spells. Valentina, still recovering from the difficult birth, struggled with postpartum depression. There were days when she could barely get out of bed, overwhelmed by feelings of inadequacy and fear. Roger did his best to support her, but he often felt out of his depth, unsure how to help. Financial pressures added to their stress. The mountain of medical bills seemed insurmountable, and Roger's attempts to find a new job were hampered by the rumors that had spread through his former business circles. They were forced to downsize, moving from the luxurious penthouse to a modest two-bedroom apartment in a less prestigious neighborhood. Despite the hardships, there were moments of pure joy that made it all worthwhile. Benjamin's first smile, his first laugh, the way he gripped Roger's finger with his tiny hand, these simple moments became treasured memories, bright spots in the midst of their struggles. As Benjamin grew stronger, defying the gloomy predictions of those early days, Roger and Valentina began to find their footing as parents. They discovered reserves of strength and resilience they never knew they possessed. And through it all, their love for each other and for their son only deepened, forged in the fires of adversity. In the months following Benjamin's birth, Valentina found herself adrift in a sea of conflicting emotions. The joy of motherhood was tempered by lingering doubts and insecurities. She loved her son fiercely, but part of her still felt like an imposter in this new life. A former homeless woman now living in a comfortable home, with a partner who loved her and a child who depended on her. As Benjamin grew healthier and more independent, Valentina began to feel restless. She was grateful for the stability and love Roger provided, but she yearned for something more, a sense of purpose beyond being a mother and partner. One afternoon, while browsing job listings online, Valentina stumbled upon an advertisement for a local women's shelter seeking volunteers. Something stirred within her, a memory of the countless nights she had spent alone and afraid on the streets. Without overthinking it, she picked up the phone and called the shelter. The volunteer coordinator, a kind-voiced woman named Maria, welcomed Valentina warmly. When Valentina hesitantly explained her background, Maria's response surprised her. "Your experience is invaluable," Maria said. "You understand these women in a way most of us never could." Valentina's first day at the shelter was a revelation. As she helped sort donations and prepare meals, she found herself opening up to the other volunteers and residents. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen and understood. The women she met, each with their own story of hardship and survival, reminded her of her own strength. As the weeks passed, Valentina threw herself into her volunteer work with growing passion. She started a support group for mothers at the shelter, drawing on her own experiences to offer guidance and encouragement. She advocated fiercely for the women, helping them navigate the complex systems of social services and job placement programs. Roger noticed the change in Valentina almost immediately. The spark that had dimmed during her struggles with postpartum depression returned to her eyes. She spoke animatedly about her work at the shelter, her face lighting up as she recounted stories of the women she was helping. But with this newfound purpose came new challenges. Valentina began to push herself hard, often returning home exhausted, both physically and emotionally. She struggled to balance her volunteer work with her responsibilities at home, leading to occasional tensions with Roger. One evening after Valentina had missed Benjamin's bedtime story for the third night in a row, Roger confronted her gently. "I'm thrilled that you found something you're passionate about," he said, "but I'm worried you're stretching yourself too thin." Valentina bristled at first, feeling defensive, but as they talked, she realized the truth in Roger's words. She had thrown herself into helping others partly as a way to prove her worth, to silence the lingering doubts about her place in this new life. This realization led Valentina to seek counseling, working through the trauma of her years on the streets and the lingering effects it had on her self-esteem. It was a difficult process, forcing her to confront painful memories and deep-seated fears. But with each session, she felt herself growing stronger, more confident in her own skin. As Valentina worked on herself, she also worked on finding a balance between her volunteer work, her family life, and her own needs. She started taking classes at a local community college, working towards completing the degree she had abandoned years ago. The intellectual stimulation, combined with her practical experience at the shelter, gave her a new sense of direction. Slowly but surely, Valentina began to see herself not as a charity case or a project, but as a strong, capable woman with valuable experiences and insights to offer. She started speaking at local events, sharing her story to raise awareness about homelessness and advocate for better support systems. Roger watched this transformation with a mixture of pride and awe. The woman he had fallen in love with was blossoming in ways he hadn't imagined possible. And as Valentina grew more confident and purpose-driven, their relationship deepened, evolving into a true partnership of equals. As Valentina found her footing, Roger faced his own set of challenges. After months of job hunting, he finally landed a position at a smaller investment firm. The salary was a fraction of what he had earned at Morgan Enterprises, but it was a relief to be working again, to feel like he was contributing financially to his family's well-being. At first, the job seemed straightforward enough. Roger's experience and business acumen quickly made him a valuable asset to the firm. His colleagues were impressed by his insights, and his boss began to rely heavily on his judgment. However, as Roger delved deeper into the firm's operations, he began to notice discrepancies. To small irregularities in the books, investments that didn't quite add up, clients whose profiles seemed too good to be true. At first, he tried to dismiss his concerns, telling himself that he was being overly cautious, that surely a reputable firm wouldn't engage in anything unethical. But the nagging doubts persisted. Late one night, as Roger pored over financial reports, he stumbled upon evidence that confirmed his worst fears. The firm was involved in a complex scheme of money laundering and fraud, using its legitimate business as a front for far more nefarious activities. Roger felt the ground shift beneath his feet. He had always prided himself on his integrity, on doing the right thing even when it was difficult. But now, faced with concrete evidence of wrongdoing, he found himself paralyzed with indecision. If he reported what he had discovered, the firm would likely collapse. Dozens of people, many of them honest employees who knew nothing of the illegal activities while their jobs. The fallout would be devastating, not just for the individuals involved, but for the families and communities that depended on them. On the other hand, if he stayed silent, he would be complicit in a crime. He thought of Valentina, of the work she was doing at the shelter, helping women build better lives. How could he face her, knowing that he had turned a blind eye to corruption and greed? For days, Roger grappled with the dilemma. He barely slept, his mind constantly churning over the possible consequences of each course of action. He became distant and distracted at home, raising Valentina's concern. "What's wrong?" she asked one evening after Benjamin had gone to bed. "You've been a million miles away lately." Roger hesitated, torn between his instinct to protect Valentina from worry and his promise of honesty. Finally, he decided to confide in her, laying out the whole situation and his fears about the potential consequences. Valentina listened intently, her face grave. When Roger finished speaking, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she took his hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "You know what you have to do," she said softly. "It won't be easy, but you can't compromise who you are. We've been through worse and we'll get through this too." Her words and the unwavering support behind them gave Roger the courage he needed. The next morning he went to his boss's office, evidence in hand, and laid out everything he had discovered. The aftermath was as chaotic and painful as Roger had feared. The firm imploded almost overnight. Federal investigators descended, and the media frenzy was intense. Roger found himself at the center of a storm, hailed as a whistleblower by some, vilified as a traitor by others. The stress took its toll on Roger and his family. There were sleepless nights spent worrying about the future, heated arguments born of fear and uncertainty. But through it all, Valentina stood by him, her support unwavering. As the dust began to settle, Roger realized that his actions, though difficult, had opened up new possibilities. He was approached by ethical investment groups impressed by his integrity. Advocacy organizations sought his expertise in identifying and preventing financial fraud. Slowly, Roger began to rebuild his career, this time on a foundation of transparency and social responsibility. He found a new sense of purpose in using his financial expertise to help non-profits and social enterprises navigate the complex world of finance. The ethical dilemma had tested Roger in ways he never expected, forcing him to confront his values and priorities. But in the end, it had led him to a path that aligned more closely with the person he had become. A man who understood that true success was measured not in dollars, but in the positive impact one could have on the world. As Benjamin grew from a fragile infant into a lively toddler, his parents began to notice something extraordinary. Even before he could speak in full sentences, Benjamin showed an uncanny affinity for music. He would hum along perfectly to melodies he'd heard only once, and his tiny fingers would tap out complex rhythms on any surface he could reach. Roger and Valentina were amazed but unsure how to nurture this apparent gift. Neither of them had any musical background, and their financial situation was still precarious. However, they were determined to give Benjamin every opportunity to explore his talent. They started small, buying second-hand instruments from yard sales and thrift stores. On a tiny keyboard here, a toy xylophone there. Benjamin took to each with enthusiasm, spending hours exploring sounds and creating his own little tunes. When Benjamin was 4, a pivotal moment occurred. Roger had taken him to the park, where a street musician was playing a battered upright piano. Drawn by the music, Benjamin toddled over and watched, transfixed. The musician, noticing the child's intense focus, invited him to try the piano. What happened next left onlookers in awe. Benjamin, barely able to reach the keys, began to play. It wasn't just random notes, but a recognizable melody, a simple version of the lullaby Valentina often sang to him. So the street musician looked at Roger in shock. "This kid," he said, "he's got a gift." That incident convinced Roger and Valentina that they needed to find a way to provide Benjamin with proper musical education. They scrimped and saved, cutting back on everything non-essential to afford piano lessons with a respected local teacher. Miss Abigail, the piano teacher, was initially skeptical about taking on such a young student. But after one lesson with Benjamin, her doubts vanished. "In all my years of teaching," she told Roger and Valentina, "I've never seen a child with such natural talent." Benjamin's progress was nothing short of remarkable. By age 6, he was playing pieces that would challenge much older students. His small hands flew over the keys with a confidence and expressiveness that belied his age. Music seemed to flow through him, as natural as breathing. As word of Benjamin's talent spread, opportunities began to present themselves. He was invited to perform at school events, then at local community gatherings. A video of one of his performances went viral on social media, catching the attention of a producer at a national television show. Suddenly, Benjamin was thrust into the spotlight. The show's appearance led to more interviews, more performances. People were captivated not just by his musical ability, but by his story, the premature baby born to a formerly homeless mother and a father who had given up everything for love. Roger and Valentina found themselves grappling with a new set of challenges. They were thrilled for Benjamin, proud of his achievements, but also worried about the pressure he was under. They struggled to balance nurturing his talent with ensuring he had a normal childhood. There were difficult conversations about how much to push, how many engagements to accept. They argued over whether to accept offers from record labels and talent agencies. Through it all, they tried to keep Benjamin's well-being at the forefront of every decision. Benjamin, for his part, seemed to take it all in stride. He loved performing, loved seeing the joy his music brought to others. But he was also a normal kid who enjoyed playing with friends and watching cartoons. His parents' efforts to keep him grounded seemed to be working. As Benjamin's fame grew, so did the pressures on the family. There were financial considerations, how to manage his earnings, how to plan for his future. There were logistical challenges of balancing his performances and practice with school and family time. But through it all, music remained a source of joy and connection for the family. Some of their happiest moments were spent at home, with Benjamin at the piano, Roger and Valentina singing along often off-key, all three of them laughing and enjoying the simple pleasure of making music together. Inspired by her volunteer work at the women's shelter and driven by her own experiences, Valentina decided to expand her efforts to help the homeless community at large. She knew firsthand the challenges and stigma faced by those living on the streets, and she was determined to make a difference. Valentina started by organizing small outreach events, partnering with local churches and community centers to provide meals, clothing, and basic necessities to homeless individuals. She spent countless hours on the streets, talking to people, listening to their stories, and trying to connect them with available resources. As her efforts gained traction, Valentina realized that addressing homelessness required more than just meeting immediate needs. She began to focus on systemic issues, advocating for policy changes and better support systems. She spoke at city council meetings, wrote op-eds for local newspapers, and rallied community support for initiatives to address homelessness. One of Valentina's most successful projects was a job training program she developed in collaboration with local businesses. Drawing on her own experience of struggling to find employment after being homeless, she created a program that not only taught practical skills, but also helped participants rebuild their confidence and overcome the stigma associated with homelessness. Roger fully supported Valentina's efforts, often using his business connections to secure funding or resources for her projects. He marveled at her passion and dedication, seeing in her work reflection of the strength and resilience that had first drawn him to her. However, Valentina's increasing public profile brought its own set of challenges. Some people, upon learning of her past, questioned her credibility or accused her of exploiting her story for personal gain. Others, including some of Roger's former colleagues, insinuated that her efforts were merely a way to legitimize her relationship with Roger. These criticisms hurt Valentina deeply, bringing back painful memories and insecurities. There were times when she questioned whether she was truly making a difference, whether her efforts were worthwhile. During one particularly difficult period, after a scathing article had been published questioning her motives, Valentina confided in Roger. "Maybe they're right," she said. her voice heavy with doubt. "Maybe I'm just fooling myself, thinking I can change anything." Roger took her hands in his gaze steady and reassuring. "Look at all the lives you've touched," he said softly. "The women at the shelter, the people you've helped get back on their feet. You're making a real difference, Valentina. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Stirred, bolstered by Roger's support and her own determination, Valentina pushed forward. She began documenting the success stories from her programs collected to data to demonstrate their impact. She invited skeptics to volunteer alongside her to see firsthand the realities of homelessness and the importance of the work being done. Gradually, Valentina's efforts began to gain wider recognition. She was invited to speak at conferences, consulted on policy proposals, and featured in national news stories about innovative approaches to addressing homelessness. But for Valentina, the most rewarding moments were still the small personal ones. Seeing a former program participant secure a stable job, helping a family move into their first apartment, or simply offering a listening ear to someone who felt invisible to the rest of the world. Through her work, Valentina not only helped countless individuals but also found healing for herself. Each person she helped was a reminder of her own journey, of the strength it had taken to rebuild her life. And in helping others reclaim their dignity and hope, Valentina fully reclaimed her own. Just as life seemed to be settling into a rhythm for the Morgan family, a figure from Valentina's past emerged to throw everything into chaos. David Reeves, Valentina's ex-boyfriend from her college days, suddenly reappeared, bringing with him a shocking claim. He asserted that he, not Roger, was Benjamin's biological father. The day David showed up at their door was like a thunderbolt out of a clear sky. Valentina, who had just returned from a community outreach event, felt the blood drain from her face when she saw him standing there. Roger, sensing her distress, instinctively moved to stand between them. David, his face a mask of barely contained anger and hurt, didn't mince words. "I saw him on TV," he said, his voice shaking. "The boy, he's mine, isn't he, Valentina? You were pregnant when you left me." Valentina felt as if the ground was crumbling beneath her feet. She had never told Roger about David, about the tumultuous relationship she'd fled from just before her life fell apart. The timing, could it be possible? No, she told herself firmly. Benjamin was Roger's son. He had to be. Roger, stunned by this revelation, turned to Valentina, his eyes searching her face. "Val," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What's he talking about?" The next few hours were a blur of accusations, tears, and painful revelations. Valentina admitted that she and David had been in a relationship during her college years, that it had been volatile and unhealthy. She explained how she'd left him, how shortly after she'd discovered her father's illness, and her life had spiraled out of control. "But I wasn't pregnant when I left," Valentina insisted, her voice hoarse from crying. "He didn't know I was pregnant until I was with Roger. Benjamin is our son." David, however, was adamant. He demanded a paternity test, threatening legal action if they refused. The possibility, however remote, that Benjamin might not be his son shook Roger to his core. The boy he had loved, nurtured, and protected since birth, could he really belong to someone else? The following weeks were a nightmare for the family. They agreed to a paternity test, if only to put the matter to rest once and for all. The wait for the results was agonizing. Roger and Valentina's relationship, once so solid, began to strain under the weight of unspoken fears and resentments. Roger found himself scrutinizing Benjamin's features, looking for any sign that the boy might not be his. He hated himself for these thoughts, for the seed of doubt that had been planted. Valentina, racked with guilt for having kept her past a secret, withdrew into herself, spending more time at work and less time at home. Benjamin, perceptive despite his young age, sensed the tension in the house. His usual exuberance dimmed, and he began to have trouble sleeping, plagued by nightmares he couldn't articulate. When the paternity test results finally arrived, the family gathered in tense silence as Roger opened the envelope with trembling hands. As he read the results, his face went through a rapid succession of emotions: shock, relief, and finally a complex mix of joy and lingering hurt. A test confirmed that Roger was indeed Benjamin's biological father. The relief was palpable, but the damage had been done. Trust, once fractured, is not easily repaired. David, upon learning the results, left as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving behind a family grappling with the aftermath of his accusations. His brief reappearance had forced Valentina to confront parts of her past she had long buried, and had shaken the foundation of trust between her and Roger. In the weeks that followed, Roger and Valentina worked to rebuild their relationship. They attended counseling, had long, painful conversations about honesty and trust, and slowly began to heal the rift that had formed between them. For Roger, it was a journey of forgiveness, not just of Valentina for her omissions, but of himself for the doubts he had allowed to creep in. For Valentina, it was a process of fully embracing her present and future, of letting go of the shame and fear that had kept parts of her past locked away. Benjamin, resilient as ever, bounced back as he sensed the tension in the house dissipating. His music, which had become somewhat subdued during the ordeal, once again filled the house with joyous melodies. The experience, though painful, ultimately strengthened the Morgan family. It taught them the importance of complete honesty, the power of forgiveness, and the unbreakable bonds of love that held them together. As they moved forward, they did so with a deeper understanding of each other and a renewed commitment to the family they had built together. So the Morgan family's life had been a roller coaster of highs and lows, but nothing could have paired them for the perfect storm of challenges that was about to hit. As Benjamin's 10th birthday approached, a series of events began to unfold that would test their resilience, love, and faith in each other like never before. It started with a letter. Roger, who had been rebuilding his career in ethical investment, received an unexpected communication from his former company, Morgan Enterprises. His father, George Morgan, had suffered a severe stroke and was stepping down as CEO. The board of directors, impressed by Roger's recent work and reputation for integrity, was offering him the position. The offer was both tempting and terrifying. It represented a chance for Roger to return to the world he had left behind, to prove himself on the biggest stage possible. But it also meant stepping back into a life that had nearly destroyed him once before. When Roger shared the news with Valentina, her reaction was mixed. She could see the excitement in his eyes, the pull of ambition that had always been a part of him. But she also remembered the long hours, the stress, the way the corporate world had nearly crushed his spirit. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you," Valentina said, squeezing his hand. "But please think carefully. We've built something beautiful here. Is it worth risking that?" As Roger grappled with the decision, another situation was brewing. Benjamin, whose musical talent had continued to flourish, was invited to audition for a prestigious music academy in New York. It was an incredible opportunity, a chance for him to study with some of the best musicians in the world. But it would mean uprooting their lives, moving away from the community they had built and the support systems they relied on. The family was torn. Roger saw the academy as a chance for Benjamin to reach his full potential. Valentina worried about the pressure it would put on their young son and the strain it would place on their family and it. Benjamin himself was excited by the prospect, but also scared of leaving behind his friends and the only home he'd ever known. As if these decisions weren't weighty enough, Valentina was facing her own crisis. Her work with the homeless community had led her to uncover a scandal involving corrupt city officials and unscrupulous real estate developers. They were systematically displacing homeless individuals, destroying shelters, and misappropriating funds meant for social services. Valentina had evidence that could blow the whole thing wide open, but going public would put her and her family in the crosshairs of some very powerful, very dangerous people. She was torn between her duty to the community she served and her need to protect her family. The tension in the Morgan household was palpable. Each of them was grappling with life-altering decisions, the weight of which threatened to pull them apart. Arguments became more frequent, silence more common. The once harmonious home was filled with an undercurrent of stress and uncertainty. One night, after a particularly heated discussion about the New York Academy, Benjamin snapped. "Stop it," he yelled, his young face contorted with anger and pain. "Just stop fighting. I won't go to the stupid academy. I don't want to play music anymore. I just want things to go back to normal." With that, he ran to his room, slamming the door behind him. Roger and Valentina stood in shocked silence, the realization of how their turmoil was affecting their son, hitting them like a physical blow. That night was a turning point. Roger and Valentina stayed up late into the night, talking more openly and honestly than they had in weeks. They realized that in trying to make the best decisions for their family, they had lost sight of what really mattered, their love for each other and for Benjamin. The next morning they sat Benjamin down for a family meeting. "We're sorry, buddy," Roger began, his voice soft. "We've been so caught up in all these big decisions that we forgot to ask what you want." Benjamin looked at them warily. "I just want us to be happy," he said in a small voice. "Like we used to be." Valentina pulled him into a hug. "Oh, sweetheart, we are happy. We love each other, and that's the most important thing. Everything else we'll figure out together." With renewed determination to face their challenges as a united front, the Morgan family began to tackle each issue one by one. First, they addressed the New York Academy. After much discussion, they decided that while it was a wonderful opportunity, Benjamin was still young. There would be other chances for advanced study in the future. For now, they would continue to nurture his talent locally, making sure he had time to just be a kid too. Next came Roger's job offer. After soul-searching conversations with Valentina and much personal reflection, Roger made his decision. He would accept the CEO position, but on his own terms. He proposed a radical restructuring of Morgan Enterprises, focusing on ethical investment and corporate social responsibility. It was a risk, but one he felt was necessary. "If I'm going to do this," he told the board, "I want to create real change, to show that a company can be profitable and socially responsible at the same time." To everyone's surprise, the board agreed. They saw in Roger's vision a chance to reshape the company's image and tap into the growing market for ethical investment. It wouldn't be easy, but Roger was ready for the challenge. Finally, there was Valentina's dilemma. After careful consideration and discussions with Roger, she decided to go public with her findings. But they would do it smart. They hired a team of lawyers, reached out to trusted journalists, and prepared for the storm that was to come. When the story broke, it was like a bomb going off in the city. The evidence Valentina had gathered was irrefutable, and the public outrage was immediate and intense. There were threats, of course. Powerful people tried to discredit Valentina, to paint her as an attention-seeking former homeless woman out for revenge. But Valentina stood firm. With Roger by her side, Benjamin cheering her on, and an army of supporters from the community she'd helped over the years, she faced the media circus with grace and determination. The aftermath was chaotic. There were legal battles, public hearings, and a complete overhaul of the city's approach to homelessness and affordable housing. Valentina found herself at the center of a movement, a reluctant but powerful voice for change. Through it all, the Morgan family's love for each other was their anchor. They faced each new challenge together, drawing strength from their bond. Benjamin's music became a source of comfort and inspiration, not just for them but for the entire community as he performed at rallies and fundraisers. As the dust began to settle, the Morgans found themselves changed. They were stronger both as individuals and as a family. Roger's new approach to running Morgan Enterprises was making waves in the business world, showing that profit and social responsibility could go hand in hand. Valentina's work had sparked real change in the city's policies, improving the lives of countless individuals. And Benjamin, he was thriving. His music had taken on new depth, inspired by the events around him. He was composing his own pieces now, complex melodies that spoke of struggle, resilience, and hope. One evening, as the family sat together in their living room, Benjamin at the piano, Roger and Valentina cuddled on the couch. They all felt a sense of peace wash over them. They had weathered the storm, faced their challenges head-on, and come out stronger on the other side. As Benjamin's music filled the room, Valentina leaned her head on Roger's shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. Roger kissed the top of her head. "We did," he replied. "Together." And in that moment, surrounded by the love of his family and the beauty of his son's music, Roger knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they had faced everything else, with love, courage, and unwavering support for each other. As the last notes of Benjamin's song faded away, the family sat in contented silence, each lost in their own thoughts about the journey they had been through and the bright future that lay ahead. If this story of the Morgan family's trials and triumphs has touched your heart, we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment with the number 1 to let us know you enjoyed this tale of love, resilience, and the power of family. And your feedback helps us bring more inspiring stories like this one to life. Remember, every comment is a vote for hope and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Just as the Morgan family thought they had overcome their greatest challenges, fate had one more cruel twist in store for them. It began on what should have been a day of celebration, the grand opening of a new shelter and community center that Valentina had worked tirelessly to establish. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was a joyous affair. City officials, community leaders, and many of the people Valentina had helped over the years gathered to commemorate the occasion. Roger stood proudly by his wife's side, while Benjamin, now 12, prepared to perform a piece he had composed specially for the event. As Valentina stepped up to the podium to give her speech, a sense of accomplishment washed over her. She looked out at the crowd, her heart swelling with gratitude and hope. But just as she began to speak, a commotion erupted at the back of the gathering. A man, disheveled and wild-eyed, pushed his way through the crowd. Before anyone could react, he pulled out a gun and fired 2 shots. The first went wide, shattering a window. The second found its mark. Valentina crumpled to the ground, a red stain blossoming on her blouse. Chaos erupted. Roger rushed to her side, his hands frantically trying to stem the flow of blood. Benjamin, frozen in horror at the piano, watched as paramedics swarmed around his mother. In the next few hours were a blur of sirens, hospital corridors, and agonizing uncertainty. Valentina was rushed into emergency surgery, hovering between life and death. Roger paced the waiting room, his mind a whirlwind of fear and desperate prayers. Benjamin sat silently, his young face pale and shocked, unable to process the sudden violence that had shattered their world. As dawn broke, the surgeon emerged, his face grave. "We've managed to stabilize her," he said, "but the bullet caused significant damage. She's in a coma, and we're not sure if she'll wake up." The words hit Roger like a physical blow. He stumbled, steadying himself against the wall. Benjamin, hearing the news, let out a heart-wrenching sob, the first sound he'd made since the shooting. In the days that followed, the true impact of the tragedy began to unfold. The shooter, it turned out, was a former city official who had been implicated in the scandal Valentina had exposed. Driven to desperation by the ruins of his career and reputation, he had sought a twisted form of revenge. The incident sparked a media frenzy. Valentina's story was everywhere, the former homeless woman who had fought to change the system, only to fall victim to its darkest elements. Public outrage was intense, with calls for justice and stricter gun control laws. But for Roger and Benjamin, the world outside the hospital ceased to exist. They spent every possible moment at Valentina's bedside, talking to her, playing her favorite music, desperately hoping for any sign of improvement. Roger struggled to balance his vigil at the hospital with his responsibilities at Morgan Enterprises. The company, still in the midst of its ethical restructuring, needed his guidance now more than ever. But how could he focus on business when the love of his life lay unresponsive, her fate uncertain? Benjamin, traumatized by witnessing the attack on his mother, withdrew into himself. He stopped playing music, the piano in their home falling silent for the first time in years. His teachers reported that he was distracted in class, his grades beginning to slip. As weeks turned into months with no change in Valentina's condition, Roger found himself facing an impossible decision. The doctors approached him with the grim reality: the longer Valentina remained in a coma, the less likely it was that she would ever recover. They suggested it might be time to consider ending life support. The very idea was unthinkable to Roger. How could he give up on Valentina, the woman who had never given up on him or anyone else? Yet, as he looked at her still form, tubes and wires sustaining her, he couldn't help but wonder if this was what she would have wanted. He tried to talk to Benjamin about it, but the boy shut down at any mention of his mother's condition. Roger realized with a pang that in his own grief he had neglected his son's emotional needs. Benjamin was slipping away and Roger felt powerless to stop it. Adding to their troubles, Roger's position at Morgan Enterprises came under threat. A faction within the board, unhappy with the ethical direction Roger was taking the company, used his frequent absences and distracted state as ammunition. They argued that the company needed a leader who could be fully present and focused. Roger found himself fighting battles on all fronts, struggling to keep hope alive for Valentina's recovery, trying to reach his traumatized son, and fending off attempts to oust him from the company he had worked so hard to reform. The stress began to take its toll. Roger lost weight, dark circles forming under his eyes from sleepless nights. He snapped at colleagues, his temper frayed by constant worry and grief. Even his relationship with Benjamin became strained, the two of them tiptoeing around each other, both lost in their own pain. One night, after another day of no change in Valentina's condition, Roger found himself standing on the balcony of their apartment, looking out at the city lights. The same view that had once symbolized his lonely existence now seemed to mock the happiness they had found and lost. Had he thought about the journey that had brought them here, the night he had first seen Valentina on the street, the struggles they had overcome together, the family they had built? It all seemed like a distant dream now, fading away with each beep of the hospital monitors. For the first time since the shooting, Roger allowed himself to cry. Great, heaving sobs racked his body as he finally confronted the possibility that Valentina might never wake up, that their story might end in tragedy after all. He didn't hear the balcony door slide open, didn't notice Benjamin's presence, until he felt his son's arms wrap around him. They stood there together, father and son united in their grief, drawing comfort from each other for the first time since the tragedy. "I miss her, Dad," Benjamin whispered, his voice choked with tears. "I'm so scared." Roger hugged his son tighter. "Me too, buddy," he admitted. "Me too." That moment of shared vulnerability marked a turning point for Roger and Benjamin. They began to talk more openly about their fears and feelings. Benjamin started seeing a therapist to help him process the trauma of the shooting. Slowly, hesitantly, he returned to his music, pouring his emotions into haunting melodies that spoke of loss and longing. Roger, inspired by his son's resilience, found renewed strength to face the challenges at work. He called a board meeting and with raw honesty laid out everything he and his family were going through. He acknowledged his recent shortcomings but reaffirmed his commitment to the company's new ethical direction. "Valentina taught me the importance of standing up for what's right no matter the cost," he told them. "I can't and won't abandon that principle now. If you want to replace me, that's your right. But as long as I'm CEO, we will continue on this path." His sincerity and passion won over many of his detractors. The board voted to retain him as CEO, with the understanding that he would delegate more responsibilities to allow him time with his family. As the 6-month anniversary of the shooting approached, Roger and Benjamin faced their hardest decision yet. The doctors were increasingly insistent that continuing life support was prolonging the inevitable. They needed to decide whether to let Valentina go. The night before they were to give their decision, Roger and Benjamin sat by Valentina's bedside. Benjamin played a recording of his latest composition, a piece that started in sorrow but ended with a gentle hope. As the last notes faded away, Roger took Valentina's hand. "I don't know if you can hear us, my love," he said softly, "but we're here. We love you. We miss you so much." His voice broke, "but we don't want you to suffer. If you need to go, if you're tired of fighting, it's okay. We'll be okay." Benjamin leaned in, kissing his mother's cheek. "I love you, Mom," he whispered. As they sat in silence, hands linked with Valentina's, they felt a peace settle over them. Whatever happened, they would face it together, carrying Valentina's love and spirit with them always. Little did they know, fate had one more surprise in store, one that would test their newfound strength and change their lives forever. As dawn broke on the day Roger and Benjamin were to make their heart-wrenching decision about Valentina's life support, an unexpected chain of events began to unfold. It started with a gentle twitch of Valentina's finger, so slight that Roger, dozing in the chair beside her bed, almost missed it. He blinked, certain he had imagined it. But then it happened again, a definite movement. Roger's heart began to race. "Valentina," he whispered, hardly daring to hope. He pressed the call button frantically, summoning the medical team. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Doctors and nurses swarmed around Valentina, conducting tests and scans. Roger stood by, alternating between desperate hope and fear that this was just a cruel trick of fate. Benjamin, who had been at home with Roger's sister, rushed to the hospital upon hearing the news. Father and son clung to each other as they waited for answers, both afraid to voice their hopes aloud. Finally, the lead neurologist emerged from Valentina's room, his face bearing an expression of cautious optimism. "It appears Mrs. Morgan is showing signs of emerging from her coma," he explained. "It's still early and we can't predict the extent of her recovery, but this is a very positive development." The news was like a jolt of electricity through Roger and Benjamin. After months of darkness, a tiny spark of hope had ignited. They took turns sitting with Valentina, talking to her, encouraging her to keep fighting. Over the next few days, Valentina showed slow but steady signs of improvement. Her eyes began to flutter, her fingers responded to commands to squeeze. But each small victory was celebrated like a miracle. A week after that first twitch, Valentina finally opened her eyes fully. Her gaze, though confused, found Roger's face. "Roger?" she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. Roger, tears streaming down his face, gently took her hand. "I'm here, my love. You're safe. But you're going to be okay." Benjamin, overcome with emotion, began to play a soft melody on the small keyboard he had brought to the hospital. As the music filled the room, Valentina's lips curved into a weak but unmistakable smile. The road to recovery was long and challenging. Valentina had to relearn basic skills: how to eat, how to walk, how to perform simple daily tasks. The bullet had left her with partial paralysis on her left side, and the months in a coma had weakened her muscles significantly. But Valentina attacked her rehabilitation with the same determination she had shown in every other aspect of her life. She took a leave of absence from Morgan Enterprises to be by her side, coordinating her care and providing constant support and encouragement. Benjamin, inspired by his mother's fighting spirit, threw himself back into his music with renewed passion. He composed a series of pieces chronicling their family's journey, from the darkest moments to the joy of Valentina's awakening. His music became a source of strength and healing, not just for his family but for everyone who heard it. As Valentina grew stronger, she began to ask about the shelter and her work. Roger and Benjamin exchanged worried glances, unsure how to tell her about the tragic circumstances that had led to her hospitalization. When they finally explained what had happened, Valentina was quiet for a long moment. Then, to their surprise, she said, "We need to finish what we started. The shelter, the programs, they're more important now than ever." Her words sparked a new sense of purpose in all of them. Even as she continued her rehabilitation, Valentina began to make plans. She dictated letters, made phone calls, and held meetings from her hospital bed. The community rallied around her. Volunteers stepped up to keep the shelter running, and donations poured in to support its programs. Valentina's story of survival and resilience inspired people, turning what could have been a tragedy into a powerful movement for change. As Valentina's recovery progressed, an unexpected opportunity arose. A national news program wanted to feature their family's story, the successful businessman who fell in love with a homeless woman, their struggles and triumphs, and now Valentina's miraculous recovery and continued fight for social justice. At first, Roger and Valentina were hesitant. They had always been private people, and the idea of sharing their story with the world was daunting. But Benjamin surprised them by advocating for it. "Mom's work has always been about giving a voice to those who aren't heard," he said. "Maybe by telling our story, we can inspire more people to make a difference." Moved by their son's wisdom, Roger and Valentina agreed to the interview. The resulting segment was powerful and deeply moving. It showcased Valentina's journey from homelessness to social advocacy, the love story that had changed both her and Roger's lives, and the tragic shooting that had almost torn their family apart. But more than that, it highlighted the issues Valentina had dedicated her life to, the struggles of the homeless, the need for comprehensive social services, and the importance of community support. The response was overwhelming. Offers of support poured in from around the country. Corporate leaders, inspired by Roger's ethical transformation of Morgan Enterprises, reached out to discuss similar initiatives. Valentina's shelter model began to be replicated in other cities. Benjamin's music, featured in the program, gained national attention. Record labels and prestigious music schools expressed interest, impressed by both his talent and the depth of emotion in his compositions. As Valentina continued to recover, the family found themselves at the center of a growing movement. They were invited to speak at conferences, consult on policy proposals, and share their story with audiences around the world. Through it all, they remained grounded in their love for each other and their commitment to making a difference. Roger continued to steer Morgan Enterprises in an ethical direction, using the company's resources to support social causes. Valentina, though still dealing with the physical effects of her injury, threw herself into expanding her advocacy work. Benjamin, balancing his budding music career with his desire to support his family's mission, began using his performances as a platform to raise awareness about homelessness and social justice. 1 year after Valentina's awakening, the family stood together at the grand reopening of the shelter where she had been shot. The building had been renovated and expanded, now serving as a comprehensive community center offering housing, job training, healthcare, and education programs. As Valentina cut the ribbon, cheers erupted from the crowd. She turned to Roger and Benjamin, her eyes shining with tears of joy. "We did it," she said. "We really did it." Roger wrapped his arm around her waist, supporting her still unsteady balance. "No, my love," he replied. "And you did it. You showed us all what's possible when you refused to give up hope." Benjamin, standing tall beside them, added, "And we're just getting started." As they looked out at the crowd, a mix of community members, supporters, and people whose lives had been touched by their work, the Morgan family felt a profound sense of purpose. They had faced unimaginable challenges, stared into the abyss of loss and despair, and emerged stronger and more determined than ever. Their journey was far from over. There would be more challenges to face, more battles to fight. But they would face them together, armed with the unshakable bond of their love and the knowledge that even in the darkest times, hope can prevail. As the celebration continued around them, Roger, Valentina, and Benjamin shared a quiet moment of gratitude. They had been given a second chance at life, at love, at making a difference in the world. And they were determined to make the most of it, one day at a time. 5 years had passed since Valentina's miraculous recovery, and the Morgan family stood on the precipice of yet another life-changing moment. The sun was setting over the city skyline, casting a warm glow over the rooftop garden of the Morgan Center for Community Empowerment, a sprawling complex that had grown from the seeds of Valentina's original shelter. Roger, his hair now streaked with distinguished silver, stood at the podium, looking out over a sea of faces. The audience was a diverse mix of corporate leaders, community activists, politicians, and most importantly, individuals whose lives had been transformed by the center's programs. 5 years ago, Roger began, his voice strong and clear. We thought we had reached the end of our journey. And we faced a darkness that threatened to extinguish everything we held dear. He paused, his eyes finding Valentina in the front row. She sat tall and proud, the cane at her side the only visible reminder of her ordeal. But what we thought was an ending turned out to be a new beginning. A chance to redefine not just our lives, but the very fabric of our community and beyond. As Roger spoke, detailing the achievements of the past 5 years, the transformation was evident to all. The Morgan Center had become a model for integrated community development, replicated in cities across the country. Its programs had lifted thousands out of homelessness, provided education and job training, and offered comprehensive support for those struggling with mental health and addiction issues. Morgan Enterprises, under Roger's leadership, had spearheaded a movement of corporate social responsibility that was reshaping the business world. The company's ethical investment strategies and community-focused initiatives had not only proven financially successful, but had inspired a wave of similar approaches across the industry. Valentina, though still dealing with the physical effects of her injury, had become a powerful voice in national discussions on social policy. Her personal story, combined with her unwavering commitment to justice, made her a compelling advocate for systemic change. As Roger concluded his speech, he gestured to the side of the stage. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce someone very special. A young man whose music has touched hearts around the world, and whose commitment to social justice continues to inspire us all. My son, Benjamin Morgan. Benjamin, now a poised young man of 17, took the stage. Gone was the shy boy who once hid behind his piano. In his place stood a confident, passionate artist, his eyes shining with purpose. He sat at the grand piano, his fingers hovering over the keys for a moment before launching into a powerful, emotionally charged piece. The music spoke of struggle and triumph, of darkness and light, of the unbreakable bonds of love and community. As the last notes faded away, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Benjamin stood, accepting the applause with a humble nod, before addressing the crowd. Music has the power to bridge divides, to heal wounds, and to inspire change, he said. But it's not enough to just create beautiful sounds. We must use our gifts, whatever they may be, to lift others up, to fight for justice, and to build the world we want to see. He went on to announce the launch of the Benjamin Morgan Music Education Initiative, a program designed to bring music education to underprivileged communities and use the power of music as a tool for social change. As the event concluded, the Morgan family found themselves surrounded by well-wishers and supporters. But amidst the celebration, Valentina noticed a familiar face hanging back from the crowd, her ex-boyfriend David. With a reassuring squeeze of Roger's hand, Valentina made her way over to David. The years had not been kind to him. He looked older than his age, his face lined with regret. "Valentina," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, I don't know if I should be here. But I needed to see you to tell you how sorry I am for everything." Valentina studied him for a moment, memories of their tumultuous past flashing through her mind. But where once there might have been anger or pain, she now felt only compassion. "Thank you, David," she said softly. "I forgave you a long time ago. I hope you can forgive yourself too." As David's eyes filled with tears, Valentina did something that surprised even herself. She hugged him, briefly but warmly. "Take care of yourself," she said as she pulled away. Returning to Roger and Benjamin, Valentina felt a sense of closure. The last lingering ghost of her past had been laid to rest, leaving her free to fully embrace the beautiful life she had built. Later that night, as the family relaxed in their home, they reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. "Do you ever wonder," Benjamin asked, "what would have happened if Dad hadn't stopped to help you that night, Mom?" Valentina and Roger exchanged a look, years of shared experiences passing between them in an instant. "I used to," Valentina admitted, "but I've come to believe that some things are meant to be. Your father and I, this family we've built, the work we're doing, it all feels like it was always supposed to happen this way." Roger nodded, taking Valentina's hand in his. "I think about that night all the time," he said. "How close I came to driving by, to missing out on the greatest love and the most meaningful life I could have imagined." Benjamin smiled, looking at his parents with admiration. "You guys taught me what real love looks like," he said. "Not just love for each other, but love for community, for justice, for making the world better." As they talked late into the night, sharing memories and dreams for the future, a sense of contentment settled over the Morgan family. They had faced unimaginable challenges, had almost lost everything, but had emerged stronger, more united, and more committed to their shared purpose than ever before. The next morning, as Valentina stood on their balcony, looking out over the city she had once roamed as a homeless woman, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey hadn't been easy, and there had been moments of despair, but every struggle had led them here, to a life rich with love, purpose, and the joy of making a real difference in the world. Roger joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. Valentina leaned back into his embrace, a smile playing on her lips. "I was just thinking about how far we've come," she said, "and how excited I am for whatever comes next." As if on cue, Benjamin's music began to drift from his room, a new composition full of hope and possibility. Roger and Valentina stood there, listening to their son's beautiful creation, marveling at the life they had built together. They knew that there would be more challenges ahead. The work of changing the world was never done. But they also knew that together there was nothing they couldn't face. As the sun rose higher in the sky, bathing the city in golden light, the Morgan family looked to the future with hope and determination. Their story of love, resilience, and the power of compassion would continue to inspire others, rippling out into the world in ways they could only imagine. And so, as a new day dawned, Roger, Valentina, and Benjamin Morgan stood ready to face whatever lay ahead, secure in the knowledge that love, family, and a commitment to making a difference could overcome any obstacle. Their journey, which had begun on a cold night with an act of kindness, had transformed not just their own lives but countless others. And in that transformation they had discovered the true meaning of success, happiness, and the enduring power of the human spirit. In the depths of our darkest moments, when all hope seems lost, remember the story of Roger, Valentina, and Benjamin. Their journey reminds us that a single act of kindness can spark a revolution of love and change lives forever. Life may knock you down, leave you homeless on the streets, or facing unimaginable tragedy. But like Valentina, you have the strength within you to rise, to fight, and to transform your pain into purpose. Love, as Roger discovered, isn't about wealth or status. It's about seeing the beauty in someone's soul and choosing them every day, through every storm. And to the young hearts like Benjamin, Never underestimate the power of your passion. Your music, your art, your voice can heal wounds and bridge divides. Remember, family isn't just about blood. It's about the bonds we forge through shared struggles and unwavering support. In our darkest hours, it's the love of those around us that lights the way forward. Your past doesn't define you. Your mistakes don't limit you. Every day is a new chance to rewrite your story, to extend a hand to someone in need, to be the change you wish to see in the world. So when life seems overwhelming, when the challenges seem insurmountable, think of the Morgans. Let their story remind you that hope never truly dies, that love can conquer all, and that each of us has the power to create ripples of change that can transform the world. Your story isn't over. Your greatest chapters may still be unwritten. Believe in yourself, in the power of love, and in the endless possibilities that arise when we choose compassion over indifference. You are stronger than you know, more resilient than you believe, and more loved than you can imagine. Never give up, for your life, like the Morgans, could be the inspiration that changes countless others. We hope the story of the Morgan family has touched your heart and perhaps even inspired you in some way. Thoughts and feelings about this tale mean the world to us. They're not just comments, they're the fuel that drives us to create more compelling stories like this one. Did a particular moment resonate with you? Did the journey of Roger, Valentina, or Benjamin strike a chord? We'd love to hear about it. Your insights and reactions help us understand what moves you, allowing us to craft even more powerful narratives in the future. So please, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Whether it's a word, a sentence, or a paragraph, every comment is a treasure to us. Tell us what you loved, what moved you, or even what you'd like to see in future stories. Remember, your engagement is what keeps this channel alive and growing. By sharing your thoughts, you're not just leaving a comment, you're becoming part of our storytelling community. You're helping us weave the tapestry of human experiences that connect us all. And if you found value in this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And it ensures you won't miss our next journey into the depths of human emotion and resilience. Your voice matters. Your opinions count. Let's keep this conversation going, and together, let's explore the boundless landscapes of human stories. Thank you for being part of this incredible journey with us.